What is up, everybody? This is the Air It Out podcast presented by Inside the Hashes. My name is Juan Pablo Guardin Camargo, and I am joined on a virtual call with some great football experts with me today. Darius Riddick, Avery Collins. What is up, guys?
What's going on? Cam Newton for MVP. I know y'all see him. I know y'all see that them training camp videos of my boy dancing, having fun. And I'm surprised Bill Belichick, the not so fun head coach, is actually allowing him to, have some type of fun and be able to dance and different things like that. So, but yeah, Cam Newton for MVP, man. Don't shake your head, Avery.
Stop it. Listen, I agree.
You should have saved that for your hot take, Darius, just so I can just tear it down immediately afterwards. And I forgot to give a special major intro to our producer / CEO of Inside the Hashes, Mr. Jerome Jones, man. I'm terribly sorry about that, man. But, I love you with all my heart, and I wouldn't try to diss you, man. I wouldn't try to ignore you. So, yeah. Guys, before we get started, I kind of saw before we went into our waiting screen, Darius give like this really crazy expression. He was like looking at something on the side, and I'm just like, what just happened? And I was looking through Twitter. I'm like, did something break? What happened? So Darius, what were you surprised by just now?
So I don't know if you guys watched, but I'm watching Legend of Korra. It's on Netflix. It came out on Netflix last week. I'm actually watching it. I got one more episode left, and I actually enjoyed it. There's a lot of slander about Legend of Korra, who's the better Avatar. That's a conversation for another day, but something really interesting happened before the show went live, and it caught my eye, and I was like, oh, wow, I have to, finish this. So once this is done, I'm hopping off to finish the last episode. It's definitely about to get... I'm on the last book of the last episode for the season. I mean, for the whole series. So yeah, after this,
I'm as much as an Avatar fan as the next guy, man. But I'm kind of with the whole Legend of Korra hate talk. What about you, Avery? Do you watch the Avatar series at all?
I watch both. I'm a very big fan as well. I'm not going to slander Legend of Korra. I don't think it's... So people the people who think it's like a top 5 anime, they're misled. But it's not terrible. It's not, it's not bottom 5 either. It's just, I would say middle of the pack. But it's something that will definitely keep your interest if you keep watching, for sure. So.
And what's sad is that the original creators of Avatar: The Last Bender walked out on the live action remake that they were going to bring to Netflix. Are they going to pull an Aang and come back 100 years later? Only time will tell. But in the meantime, we're going to have to roll with the punches, guys, and that means running into the rundown. And starting off today's rundown, we're going to go into Jacksonville, where these pesky Jaguars could not make up their mind. One report yesterday by Michael Lombardi has the star pass rusher linked to the Jets, Eagles, and Raiders in multi-mid-round pick trade offers. And by star pass rusher, I mean Yannick Ngakoue. However, Jaguar GM David Caldwell says there are no trade rumors that are legit and that he is biding his time until a better offer comes in or he convinces Yannick to sign. Either way, Yannick has made his stance with the Jaguars very clear that he does not want to stay in Duval past the 2020 season. Moving into Dallas, the Cowboys right tackle La'el Collins was involved in a major car crash today, according to NFL.com's Ian Rappaport. Collins is expected to be okay, but had to miss camp today, obviously, for treatment. This just highlights a number of offensive line depth issues for the Cowboys, as Cam Irving and Tyron Smith have been absent from camp for, quote, personal reasons. Moving up into Missouri, Kansas City Chiefs put out a statement earlier today that prohibits fans from wearing Native American headdresses to games, citing that they want to, quote, raise awareness on the rich traditions of tribes with a historic connection to the Kansas City area. Face paint is still allowed, the report goes on, but there's no word on whether or not they'll still allow the tomahawk chop. Alex Smith has made his return in pads this week with Washington, a possibility no one thought was remotely feasible after the veteran QB snapped his leg in two years ago against the Texans by J.J. Watt. It's been a long recovery road for Smith, but he could get a chance. As Ron Rivera said, he could compete for a starting spot against second-year quarterback Dwayne Haskins. Moving on into the upper region of Ohio, down in Cincinnati, Bengals wide receiver John Ross is making his return to Bengals training camp after he was excused for a couple weeks to attend to his wife and infant child, both who had a bout of COVID-19. Ross has been put in the reserve COVID list, but could be eligible to join the team as soon as this Saturday. And finally, this might be the scariest injury to come out of training camp, you guys. Safety Kevin Johnson of the Cleveland Browns was hospitalized after suffering a lacerated kidney in practice when a teammate landed on top of him. The former 16th overall pick out of Wake Forest missed 29 games in his 4-year career with the team that drafted him, Houston, before the Texans ultimately released him in March of 2019. His injury list is rather extensive. Broken foot, torn MCL, multiple concussions, and that has been the biggest criticism on Johnson so far in his career thus far. Now, that concludes today's rundown. Darius, I know you had something to say about the Alex Smith coming up in pads, man. And that video that came out of him and his children, he was seen limping as he was coming down the stairs. Are people overreacting, or is there a valid reason of concern?
I think it's a little bit overreaction. I think obviously Alex Smith knows his body the best. So if he wants to go out there and play the game that he obviously loves, he's going to do it. I think, granted he had a year off last year, obviously having this, almost a career-ending injury, but his doctors or people will clear them. I do think as the team, they're probably going to take it light on him, especially just because, like you said, any sign like that, a limp or, he stay on the ground a little bit too long, maybe he grabs that leg, does raise, some type of concern, especially if he's going to be a quarterback going into, going into week 1. But I definitely think it does raise a little bit of concern, but if it's not something that's too big yet. But it's so good to see Alex Smith be back on the field playing the game that he loves. We know his skill set. I think he's a solid quarterback. Avery alludes to it. I think he's one of the best game management quarterbacks that we have currently in the NFL. He doesn't turn the ball over. He can control the time possession and different things like that. So I actually I can't wait to see videos of him and Dwayne Haskins kind of just going at it to see who's going to be that starting quarterback week 1.
Yeah, when it comes to Alex Smith, man, I think my biggest concern is the first hit, right? Can he take a hit to that leg? That's the biggest concern because we know it's not, it's he's cleared for football activity and all those different things, but there's a difference between football activity and actually getting hit. So that's my biggest concern. If he can sustain getting hit in that leg, then I think not only does he compete for a starting job, I think he wins out. I think he's an excellent quarterback. Before he went down, Washington was winning the division. Looked like they were going to win the division pretty easily that year as well. But my biggest concern is staying in the division is the Cowboys. It seems like they can't catch a break, man. They're just injury ridden right now. Jared McCoy out for the year with a torn ACL. You're talking about Tyron Smith and others on the offensive line now who are missing practice and who are dealing with injuries and different things like that. And it's seeming that they're going to just have to fight through dealing with a lot of injuries this year. And it's not, it's like foreshadowing almost. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that they can stay healthy and compete, but just right now, I mean, Jared McCoy is a huge loss on that defensive line. So, anything on the offensive line is obviously just as big a deal.
And, the NFC West is wide open. And as Darren Braxton puts it, because he'd be watching us from his work. How you doing, Darren? Yeah, Alex Smith is the best game manager out there. Happy to see him doing well. We all are. And if he doesn't have comeback player of the year secured as an NFL reward, I really don't understand what the award is there for in the first place. But, we wish we don't know how the NFC East is going to turn out. Cowboys on the rise, Eagles on the rise, Giants on the rise, and maybe Washington potentially with a small bit of optimism to sprinkle in, but only time will tell. But, we're going from the East to the West, specifically heading to the Kansas City Chiefs, who reported earlier this week that they will only be allowing a maximum capacity of 22% of fans for home games, all right? And they'll be selling tickets at a limited capacity in a grouped deal that would include pods of seats for big groups of people scattered across the stadium. Now, guys, a lot of stadiums across the NFL have already banned any form of attendance to these football games whatsoever, MetLife Stadium being the one closest to home. So is this a good move by the Kansas City Chiefs? Because we saw the Cowboys do the same thing, trying to do a pod situation, but Kansas has it at a lower capacity. Is it smart? Avery, I want to start off with you there.
So my initial reaction is this is not smart. I think you're putting the season in jeopardy, in my opinion, right? If, let's say there's an outbreak because of these fans, because of these fans being in the stadiums, let's say there's an outbreak within the fans or within that city or whatever the situation, it puts the season at risk. It doesn't look good from a PR standpoint as well. It looks like you were careless and you were worried more about having fans in the stadium than having fans and your players being healthy. So that's how I look at it on the one hand. But then I look at it on the other hand. Kansas City is one of the lower, one of the states with a lower positive rate of COVID. So it's not like they're running rampant or throughout this entire pandemic that they've even been close to one of the top cities in the nation. So it looks like, or it seems like they have some type of control on it. And so I guess in that sense, they're saying, hey, listen, we don't have a huge number of people who have tested positive for COVID, nor do we have a high number of a high death toll from people, passing from COVID. So I guess in their minds, they're saying, if we continue to stick with our protocol and then maybe even up the ante on some different things, I guess they can make a case there. But for me, I personally would just make the call, no fans, and just, it's one season. The fans will be okay. It's one season. I get it. It's coming off your Super Bowl season and different things like that. But at the same time, you're talking about no headgear. You're talking about potentially eliminating the tomahawk chop. So it's so many different things where it's just like it's almost pointless for fans to be in the stands. You give them a year to sit on, because there's going to be some upset fans. Oh, no headgear, no tomahawk chop, no this, no that. So you give them a year to kind of sit on it and have to deal with it. It's like, okay, and plus, with the whole COVID thing, then next season, it's easier. Yeah. So I wouldn't do it, but that's just me.
Well, eliminating tomahawk chop will be one thing, especially because FSU has made it a popular thing. But that'll be decided going forward. Darius, with regards to the Chiefs, is 22% enough to stop a COVID pandemic to break out in the stadium?
Avery made a great point about, Kansas City as a state, or as a city, they don't have that many COVID cases, right? The positive rate is not that high. The deaths aren't that high, right? But I understand where Kansas City is coming from. We have to understand this team has won a Super Bowl. And it's been years since, almost 50 plus years since they won their last Super Bowl. It's their banner night, the championship ring. You would want your fans to be there to feel that, to feed off that momentum. So I can understand why Kansas City is like, hey, you know what? We'll allow a capacity limit. Here's my whole thing with everything with fans coming to the games. If the NFL decides, if every other team, obviously, like we said, MetLife says, hey, we're not having fans. Gillette Stadium, same thing. We're not hosting fans for the first 2 home games, right? Moving forward, Kansas City is kind of going to be the blueprint. They're going to see how it works. We're going to allow fans at this capacity. We're going to see, then we're going to have those fans probably test. Obviously, they're going to have different procedures for those fans to come in, temperature checks and social distancing and different things like that. The bathrooms they'll have the little footprints thing, so you're practicing social distancing and different things like that. But Kansas City is going to be the blueprint for the rest of the NFL. So if Kansas City has a successful home opener and they practice social distancing and they have a capacity limit, other teams may be like, okay, you know what, we can do the same, but we're going to do it at a lower capacity rate. I don't think you're going to have teams like, the Jets. Obviously, we live in New Jersey. New York is right there. Connecticut's right there. If the Giants decide to open MetLife, they're not going to do it at 22% capacity. You might see something around 10% capacity. I personally can't imagine an empty football stadium and watching a game. It's weird watching, the NBA playoffs with no fans, but just imagine a big empty football stadium without no fans. You just see the referees and you have the players and different things like that. So I definitely do think I understand where Kansas City's coming from, especially just because, like Avery said, that city has not had a lot of COVID cases. Places that have a lot of COVID cases, until they get it under control, obviously they're gonna, you wouldn't have no fans and no stadiums. But I definitely think Kansas City is the blueprint. And if they have a successful season opener with the 22% capacity of fans, obviously limited tickets, I think other teams are going to start to take notice, and then they're going to open up their stadiums for home games and different things like that. But it won't be probably until week 3, 4, 5, and 6 like that in the later weeks. You won't see for the first 2 weeks. I think we have to get used to seeing no fans, and then obviously, as the season progresses, we'll start to see fans slowly come in. 5% capacity and different things like that. So.
Houston will be the first team to face the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs on a Thursday night football season opener. And before we move on to our next topic, I just want to say shout out to Chris Thomas, former member of the Air It Out podcast, was here when I was originally the host when we were doing this. Chris, love you, man. Hope you're doing well. Got to catch up soon, my guy. And guys, thinking about this Kansas City Chiefs situation, it kind of has me thinking about their salary cap situation. When the Chiefs started, they had $170 in total cap space to start 2020 free agency, and they've been able to sign major contracts with Patrick Mahomes and with Travis Kelce, just to name a few, and keep their star players retained going forward. And that kind of drives me to our next conversation, which is the Packers signing their nose tackle, Kenny Clark, to a 4-year, $70 million deal. Now, Kenny Clark is your typical nose tackle, can stop the run, and has been able to show pressure in passing situations better than any interior offensive lineman has, aside from Damian Harrison back in his heyday with the Jets and the Giants. So, guys, I want to ask you, for a nose tackle, did the Packers overpay for a position that has basically gone extinct in a modern NFL landscape? Darius, I want to start with you there.
I don't think so. And, after looking at his stats, he finished for over 60-plus tackles for a nose tackle, about 6 sacks. And I think for a nose tackle, those are pretty good stats. You have to understand he's a nose tackle. So, the Packers did the right thing by locking up somebody who they felt like, is key to their defense. And I personally think he is. They have a young defense. It's a growing and young defense that's still kind of learning. So you do the best thing you can do on that defense, and you sign a guy very early. That's been the trend in the NFL. You see a lot of these young players, still have maybe 2 years left on their contract, maybe 1 year left on their contract, and it seems like, we're gonna give you a contract extension, so we don't have to worry about you. Now they can, now the Packers can really turn their attention onto some of their other younger players, like Jair Alexander, who I believe is a free agent after this season. So it's either this season or next season he's a free agent. But now that you have one player, you can focus on your back end of your defense and the secondary, your linebacker, and your linebackers position core. But I definitely think he didn't get overpaid. I believe it says something about he's making 32 or 35 million in the next two years. Like you said, nose tackle is definitely going. It's an distinct position. I think that Kenny Clark is one of those players that's kind of bringing it back, and I do think there's a little bit of pressure on him just because he's the highest paid nose tackle now. So that does come with a little bit of pressure. Now you have to live up to that contract. Now you're gonna have guys like us and the media saying now there's a certain standard that you have to live up to, because if not, how this is. This is a business. So your teams are very quick to trade you or release you and move on. So I definitely think that there's a little bit of pressure on him just to produce or just to continue to produce. So shout out to Kenny Clark to get into the bag, man.
Avery, the Packers have been slowly building a championship caliber defense over the past 2 or 3 years through the draft, and last year really throwing money out of free agency. But now, as a result of focusing so much on defense, the offense has suffered. Instead of drafting a wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers, they drafted a running back in the second round and a future quarterback replacement in the first round. Tommy, are the Packers doing the right thing by focusing on paying defense and drafting on offense, or should it be the other way around? Sorry, Avery, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. It's tough because I think obviously defense wins championships, right? And when you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a quarterback who can kind of, as long as you can keep a team under a certain amount of points, you're almost guaranteed Aaron Rodgers is going to put up points for you, right? So if you can keep, let's say that defense can keep teams 20 points and under, you would think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to put up 20 points in a football game. He's just that good. It doesn't matter really the supporting cast. He's just that good. And then you've got the weapons with Devontae Adams. You've got Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Scanlon. It looks like he can be a solid number two guy. So it's tough for me to say whether they should draft or bring guys in through free agency. I do think obviously that they should have gotten a receiver, right? I think we all agree there they should have gotten a receiver to help Aaron Rodgers out. Should have gotten him more weapons, but I don't think it's extremely necessary, only because of how good Aaron Rodgers really is. But again, and we saw what he did with a defense this past year. I believe they went 13 and 3, and it's because they had a defense. We saw him pregame. I think it was like the second or third game of the season when he was ecstatic. Oh, we got a defense after a win, right? Because that's all he really wants is a defense. It's not the weapons per se. It's really the defense. He really wants his defense to stop people from scoring the football so he can get on the field and score the football. So I think it was a good move to make sure that Clark stays put in Green Bay because he's that good at that position. I understand that the position is essentially obsolete at this point, but with the way they're running their defense, you want a guy like that on your defense. To Darius's point, 60 tackles and 6 sacks for a defensive for a nose tackle. Those are amazing numbers. And they continue to build around that. I think they have with Jair Alexander on the outside being young, with I'm gapping his name, the safety they drafted 2 years ago.
Darnell Savage?
No, they signed Darnell.
Yes, Savage.
That's your man's right there.
That's my boy. Savage. So I think they're young enough on defense. I think obviously, like I said, you want to have some staple guys as well. I think Clark is one of those staple guys. So I don't think it's a bad thing to build the defense and allow Aaron Rodgers just to beat Aaron Rodgers on offense.
He remembered. He remembered, and Avery made some solid points there, and Clark certainly is considered a more underrated prospect on this stellar Packers defense. And as Darren put it earlier, he is a beast. He's great against the run. He can get pressure up the middle. He's just been getting better ever since he came in to the league. And I know that was Chris that tweeted it about Darnell Savage Jr. Avery, you gotta stay on top, man. You gotta stay on top.
Clark made Blake Martinez look like he was a Pro Bowler. Let's just put it that way. Because Blake Martinez, I think, is a solid linebacker, but his numbers last year made you think that he was better than he truly is. I think that had a lot to do with Frank Clark being in front of him.
Hence the big contract from the New York Giants did go Blake Martinez. And now, that might be one player, Blake Martinez. You said that he looked better this year with Kenny Clark than he's going to look. He looked better last year than he's going to go looking into going this year. And, that kind of begs the question, are there other players that are going to be coming down from the highs that they experienced last season? Which brings us to our last topic of today, come down players of the 2020 season. Usually we have come back or players on the come up. Now we're checking which players are on the come down. And Avery, I know you had a chance to choose between Christian McCaffrey or Michael Thomas. In the end, who'd you end up picking?
I ended up picking, as much as I wanted to go with Michael Thomas, I think it's pretty evident from everyone that Michael Thomas is not going to have the same year that he had last year. Obviously, he broke an NFL record that stood for years. He's not going to do stuff like that again. He's not going to break his own record. He's not going to go for 2,000 yards. He's just going to be Michael Thomas and be very good, right? He's going to be very good. We just know that. But, like I said, the drop off isn't going to be so drastic that we're like, man, was this I think that's going to be the case for Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying that I don't think he's going to be top 5 or that he'll be top 10 or anything like that. I think he's good. He's solid. But the numbers that he put up last year, he's not doing that again. Here's the reasons. The reasons I believe so are number one. Again, they didn't really get too much better at the receiver position, so he's still really the only threat, right? He's still really the only threat on that offense.
Another running back with a drop down, according to Chris Thomas. But continue, Avery.
Yeah, so I could see Aaron Jones dropping down as well because they got a running back, which makes sense. But again, you look at the numbers that he put up. Teams are going to key in on this guy now. I mean, I would not be surprised if he has nickel corners guarding him coming out of the backfield instead of putting a linebacker out. For me, it's too much pressure to put on him. And like I said, it's not like Teddy Bridgewater is where Cam Newton kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of Christian McCaffrey as well because of the fact that he was a threat to run as well.
But then
you're not getting that.
Kyle Allen also have a chance though.
Of course. Now Kyle Allen is not Cam Newton either or anything like that. But again, it was a situation where you didn't know what you're getting from Kyle Allen. There was no film on him, right? So he was the new guy. He was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? But he's a pocket passer. We're thinking he's going to pick us apart. All he's going to do is dip and dunk it to Christian McCaffrey, and he's just doing his thing. Teddy Bridgewater's proven. They know we have to make sure Teddy Bridgewater doesn't beat us. Point blank, period. Because he can, and he will. But like I said, I think Christian McCaffrey is still going to put up all-pro numbers. I still think he's going to be great, but I think we're just going to see a decline. Like he's not going to have 100 catches again. He's not going to have
It's kind of like the Patrick Mahomes argument. He put up 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns in his first year as a starter. And then moving on, he didn't have as much of a statistical advantage, but he won a Super Bowl. It's similar to the Christian McCaffrey.
That's exactly.
It's not
that's exactly. Yep, that's exactly right.
Darius, who would your pick be for a come down play?
And I think when I name this person, like we said, it's not going to be a significant drop. It's just going to be a big enough that we realize that. I'm gonna go with D-Hop in Arizona, and I think we know what DeAndre Hopkins' production is, right? We see him as a 1,000-yard receiver, right? 100+ catches, right? But I think now, like I said, it's not going to be a big drop where he's borderline 5.
Nah.
I definitely see him, 70 to 75 receptions to borderline. I don't see him going over 1,200 yards, and I don't see him getting over six passing touchdowns, just because I still have questions as far as the offensive line with the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, we see quarterbacks. There's a trend, of course, sometimes where quarterbacks have a solid rookie year and they take that sophomore slump. Baker Mayfield. I'm not saying Kyler Murray is Baker Mayfield, but we see that normally happen with second-year quarterbacks, and then their third and fourth year they start to go. It's really going to depend on Kyler Murray and that protection. I still have a lot of.
But it also depends on the fact that with Baker Mayfield's down year, it was Freddie Kitchens manning the ship, not Cliff Kingsbury, who has run a four spread offense with a recent college quarterback. So it still works. Plus, D-Hop on the outside with the vertical routes and post routes coming down, it works out for a quarterback.
Let me finish. We're used to D-Hop stats, right? We're used to 100+ receptions, about 1,200 to borderline 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, right? I'm not saying he's going to significantly drop. We just used the Patrick Mahomes example. He threw for 50 touchdowns, right? And then he kind of, he threw for 30+, still threw for 4,000 yards. He's still going to be a 1,000-yard receiver, in my opinion. But he's not going to have that great of a year where you say, all right, D-Hop, if you look at the stats, D-Hop is top 3 in receiving yards. D-Hop is top 3 in, receiving touchdowns. I think he's going to fall. And
what? Dude.
That's just me.
No,
I can't see that.
Real quick.
I can't see that. Larry Fitzgerald had 800 yards on 75 catches and 4 touchdowns. Larry Fitzgerald is not as good as DeAndre Hopkins is right now. There's no way he's not going to eclipse 75 catches and 6 touchdowns in Arizona. I'm sorry. I just had to say that. Because if Larry's doing it, and Larry's lost at least, you know how they say, somebody still lost.
Have like 4 touchdowns.
Listen, you said 6. That's just 2 more.
He's not going to get double digits.
Even Kyler Murray has your number, man. And I'm sorry, but when the 5'9" quarterback that won Rookie of the Year is tossing you, bruh, you can't go back. But now I'm going to throw into my pick come down player of the year. And initially, I had a quarterback in mind for this. But then I kind of was looking at this towel that I bought online. And, the towel looks like this. And I put it online because I love collecting NFL memorabilia. Yes, it's a terrible towel. No, I'm not a Steelers fan. I just appreciate NFL history. And, it kind of got me thinking, who's a player on that team that I think is going to be on decline? And honestly, it's a player who's been consistent, doesn't put up wow numbers, but has been consistent on the defensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm talking about Cameron Hayward, the defensive end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, he's been a stellar force. He's been a sack machine. He's been able to penetrate through the AFC North lines and been just a scary force and been giving T.J. Watt a chance to shine as a pass rusher on the outside. But he's getting up there in age, Cameron Hayward is. And you know how they say the older the defensive tackle, the slower he gets and the more likely he's prone to injury. I mean, we just saw Gerald McCoy go down with a season-ending injury at 32 years old. And Cameron Hayward is time is not on his side. He's on the wrong side of 30, and I just don't think he's going to be able to put up the same consistency that he has in years past.
If he stays healthy, I'm going to disagree, but I can see some injuries kind of, plaguing him. But just with what they have on the front seven, there's just too much depth on the front seven with Dupree and Hayward and Watt. To me, it's like as long as they can stay healthy, I think they consistently put up their regular numbers, if not more.
Looking closely though, that Steelers defense, it's good, but it's not great. Bud Dupree has proven to be a fringe player, to say the least, of what he is. He has potential, high ceiling, but has not hit that ceiling yet. The only viable weapon on defense that you have there is T.J. Watt, and now it's the
back end though. It's the back. I was going to say it's the back end of the defense though. Their secondary isn't so bad. Where because the other thing is, how they say a good pass rush will make your corners look good. Mm-hmm. We've seen these defensive backs look good with or without pass rushers. So for me, it's a compliment. They're going to complement each other. So it's going to be a situation where if the pass rush isn't working, the secondary is still going to be okay. And if the pass rush is working, or let's say the secondary is locking people up, it gives the pass rush that much more time to get to the quarterback. So I think they're a solid defense. I don't think they're a defense of old, with Charles Timmons and James Harrison and different things like that. But I do believe that they're solid enough to where everybody can complement each other and everybody can continue to eat.
Quickly, before we move on to our hot take session, our guy Darren said that he sees Derrick Henry, who just signed a multi-year contract with the Titans, actually having a down year. Now, I kind of have to agree. Well, he's a solid year, but will not be the rushing leader. Obviously, no, he's not going to be the rushing leader. That'll probably go to either Christian McCaffrey or Ezekiel Elliott for the Cowboys, because who else would try to vie for that spot? But Nick Chubb, underrated guess. But with Henry, he's a power back with a strong stiff arm and great speed. But so many hits and so many carries can weigh down on the body. Just ask New York Jets running back Le'Veon Bell. And going forward into that, we are moving into the hot take portion of the Air It Out podcast. And, Darren, if you're still online and you're watching, you can submit your hot take and we'll read it out for you. But I'm going to give it to Darius first. And Darius, what is your hot take for today, my friend?
This may not be too hot, but just giving it some thought. My man Chandler Jones out in Arizona will break the sack record this year.
Cute. Sorry, I just had to.
My man's he will break the sack record this year. He's coming for that sack record. He's coming for it. He's definitely gonna. He breaks it. He definitely is gonna break it.
Chandler
That's a hot take.
A pass rusher that ages well.
I felt like it was a little lukewarm. I didn't think I was gonna.
No, that's a hot take.
That's spicy because he is a premier pass rusher. Had 19.5 sacks last season, but he's much older than some of the premier pass rushers right now, like T.J. Watt, like Aaron Donald, and also and you know, Von Miller is aging just as well as Chandler, but Chandler has the edge of age on Von Miller. So I could see that potentially happening. Good job, Darius.
I will say this. I think when we list like top premier pass rushers in the league, I feel like we don't mention Chandler Jones as much as we should. You do have people that will put him up there, but he does not get enough credit. And I think it's because he's in Arizona and the market and different things like that. But that man, if we watch his games, that man is a beast. So I definitely can see him.
Well, with DeAndre Hopkins, with Kyler Murray, with Cliff Kingsbury manning the Arizona ship, get prepared to see that Phoenix market hit at the top level. Avery, where are you hitting your hot take for today?
First things first, you said something about Derrick Henry and people getting, running backs getting hit and them slowing down. The issue with that is people don't like to hit Derrick Henry.
They don't.
So, I mean, just ask Earl Thomas. They don't like hitting Derrick Henry, man. So I think he could lead the league in rushing again. Like I wouldn't be surprised with that because he's, especially late in the year when it's cold and people don't like. Listen, I'm not trying to hit somebody 6'4", 250, 60 pounds. I'm good off that. So my hot take, you actually mentioned his name one. And it's actually going to conflict a little bit with Darius's. So we're going to see who's right at the end of this season. If he remains healthy, if Bradley Chubb remains healthy, Von Miller will lead the league in sacks.
Do you have a projected number?
He will actually break the sack record.
Ooh.
And I'm not talking about break. I'm talking about shatter. I'm seeing 30.
And and you're saying that with a healthy Bradley Chubb, that's what it's going to take?
Correct.
Okay, Darius.
3-0?
3-0, 30 sacks.
That's
NFL
high.
record that'll never be broken.
That's high. That's hot. That is wow. We're gonna see who's right. We're gonna see who's
Listen,
right.
man. Listen, I just feel like what they have on the defensive line, he's going to see so many single coverage, and he's unblockable if you just block him with one dude. And then if you do want to double him, now you're allowing guys like Wolf and Chubb to be single covered, and we know what they can do. I mean, the back end of the defense still isn't bad with Justin the safety Simmons. And so like I just feel like what they can do, and with the weapons they have on offense, I feel like potentially teams are going to be playing from behind. You don't want to play from behind with Von Miller. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. I'm sorry. Listen, bro. I'm sorry. I feel like, again, listen, watch the film. Earl wanted no parts of Derrick Henry.
He did.
Again, 30 sacks, man. I'm 30 sacks, dude. I don't know. Again, you got Cortland Sutton, you got Phillip Lindsay, you got Melvin Gordon, you got Derek Locke, who played phenomenal toward the last part of the season. They just got Jerry Jeudy. Listen, they've got some weapons on offense, and if they're scoring points and teams have to come from behind, nobody wants to do that against Von Miller. It's like he just I don't like when you're behind, he's like, bet, now it's my time.
The Broncos
we're talking about a Super Bowl MVP.
The Broncos have been a dark horse favorite with regard to playoff contention because of the addition of Jared Jeudy alongside Cortland Sutton and Drew Lock on the rise, and a talented defense, albeit they did lose Chris Harris to the rivals Los Angeles Chargers. Which brings me to my hot take of the day, because we are moving to the LA Chargers, who have been sharing the spotlight of the Hard Knocks series with the LA Rams. And you know what? Watching this has reminded me how underrated. Can you hear me, Avery?
I can hear. I'm waiting for it. That's all.
Watching Hard Knocks and me being sympathetic to good storytelling has made me reignite my love for underrated pass catchers, a la Keenan Allen. And I'm gonna say it here right now that Keenan Allen will lead the NFL in receiving yards with 1,400 and touchdowns with 16.
It's not going to happen.
Will win Rookie of the Year as a result.
That's a hot take only because it's actually not going to happen. He's never. When has he ever led the league in receiving yards? When is he like? Come on, Keenan Allen is good. He's good. I think he's phenomenal.
Premier runners, hands soft as butter. Although he
couldn't do it with Phillip Rivers.
Keep in mind that last year he still hit over 1,100 yards with an aging Phillip Rivers. Terrible offensive line play and no other premier receiver outside of Mike Williams to help him in production. And
Phillip Rivers perennially throws over 4,000 yards, close to 5,000 yards.
And how many interceptions was that last year, Avery?
It doesn't matter. Keenan Allen is his favorite target. I mean, if he can't do it with him, it's not going to happen. And let's not forget, Keenan Allen is getting older, and he's got some injuries and different things. Like, I'm sorry, it's not happening.
I mean, I definitely think he'll be in the top 5 of receiving yards. I definitely see him
I don't see that
yards, but leading the league now. Keenan Allen is nice. I like Keenan Allen. I think he's very, very underrated. I think people don't.
Darius, get closer to the mic.
I don't think people put enough respect on Keenan Allen's name, but I don't see him leading the league. I just don't.
My shout out to my
both stats. Nah.
Yeah, shout out to my homie Deontay, who just posted a status about this in the Inside the Hashes football chat room on Facebook. If you're not on there, go and follow. But he just said, literally, because of this Hard Knock series, people are going to start talking about Keenan Allen being a top 5, top 3 receiver and yada, yada, yada. It's literally what happens every year when Hard Knocks comes out. It's like, oh, we get to see this guy. And now their name is being.
Avery, you can't talk because your Falcons were featured on Hard Knocks, and they all said the same thing about Julio Jones, and it happened. So who's to say?
But Julio actually is Julio's Julio.
I will not featured on this podcast, sir, and it will not happen. And you know what? I have the power to end the conversation here.
It's Julio.
Time here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending.
It's Julio.
In all seriousness, though, we have run out of time here at the Air It Out podcast. You know how we like to have fun and just talk ball when we can. And you can also find this podcast and all of our other stuff on our social media. On Facebook, we are Inside the Hashes. On Twitter, we are at Inside Hashes. On Instagram, we are at Inside the Hashes. And you can also find this podcast on our website, InsideTheHashes.com, on SoundCloud, on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Inside the Hashes is there, you guys. So I'm Papa Bernie Camargo, speaking for Darius Riddick, Jerome Jones, Avery Collins, Chris Thomas, and Darren Braxton, all the way from his work. Get in the bag. We'll see you next time.